Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk Podcast. I'm Brian Horning. With me, it's great to have Randy and Andre locked in with us this morning. What's up, guys?
Not much. How's it going? Looks like Andre's muted.
Andre muted himself.
Oops, sorry about that. Good morning on this sunny day.
So, Randy, what's up, Randy? We got you digging into a massive data breach hitting millions of consumers through credit service providers that most of us never even heard of or thought about. And Andre is going to bring us a story about shifting tactics of state-sponsored attackers turning on what we call network edge devices. These are firewalls and things like that. Andre will dive into that with us and explain what those devices are and why it's such a concern. But before we get there, we're going to jump into what Randy's been watching, and that's this 700 credit breach. Randy, I'm going to bring this up on the screen here in a second.
Yeah, so basically this company provides credit reports, basically credit verification for vehicle dealerships. And the reason this caught my eye is several reasons. One, in the States, I know we have some watchers of our podcast from outside the United States. In the United States, dealers, car dealers are basically treated like a version of a bank with what's called the FTC safeguards rule, where they brought in some quasi-financial institutions to be covered by these extra rules. So that's one of the reasons this caught my eye. It's because it's a dealer. They serve dealerships where to the tune of 5.8 million of their customers were affected. So hundreds and thousands of dealerships around the country all plugging in to this service, and 5.8 million of their customers have been affected. Also caught my eye because this is another black eye on the car dealership industry in general, because what was it like last summer, about a year ago ish, where we had that other the big software that got hacked. A lot of dealers ran off that. A lot of dealers were having to do pen and paper. Some people that I know that have car dealerships were having to do pen and paper for selling things and stuff like that, because their entire software went down. So this is an industry. This is like a black eye on the other eye now. And then the other thing that caught my eye, Brian, I think there's going to be a lawsuit here. Not your typical, ambulance chaser lawsuit, because this breach involved a third party that they did some kind of processing for 700 credit, and they had what's called an API where that third party plugged into 700 credit to get data. Okay. Well, the headlines keep saying the third party got hacked and therefore the bad guys got access to their API and got in. But like we like to do on this show, if you read between the lines, it says the API was misconfigured and the call in. So what an API, it allows, it's like a backdoor for the good guys to be able to extract data, right? And the API didn't do a certain verification. So yeah, you had the password, which the bad guys got. So basically the username and the password on an API are both passwords. The bad guys got that. There was another thing they could have done to basically verify that it was actually who they were. And it would have slowed them down and highly limited them, but that wasn't turned on in the API from the 700 credit side. It's the best that I can understand, read between the lines. So I think there's going to be some legal stuff here as we kind of sort this out, because who's really at fault? The third party that got hacked and then the bad guys got in through the third party, through the API, pulled out 5.8 million vehicle dealership customers. We're talking names, social security numbers. This is a big deal. Chat GPT, bad GPT is going to have a heyday with this information when it gets sold. But who's at risk or who's at fault here? Is it going to be the third party who got hacked and the bad guys got in through their API? Or is it going to be 700 credit because their API didn't limit the data that came out by certain factors? If they could have done that, it would have like greatly shut this thing down. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. This is kind of new. The other crazy thing is the bad guys were in there for more than a minute. They were in there, I think, for a few months. They got in May, was discovered October of 25. So they were in there. What is that? Like 4 or 5 months. So this is a pretty big deal. A lot of important information that got out, and then a lot of he said, she said it's going to come out, I think, in legal battles over this thing. We might want to follow up with this in about a year and see how this all how it all shakes down. That's basically the gist of it.
It's crazy. So this is one of those things that's going to get buried, in just everything that happens, right? Press releases, class action lawsuits. Like, again, like you said, you're going to have to follow up in a year because this is going to take time to play out. This is not one of those what you would call sexy cyber attacks, right? It's a breach that's going to play out over time, long drawn out, and not only is it going to be hard to get answers as to what happened, in terms of how to better defend against things like this, but it's also going to be everybody involved. It's going to be long and drawn out for victims, for the people who were hacked. That's what these cyber criminals are doing out there and making money for themselves, but also causing all kinds of trouble for businesses like this. And we just don't understand the long-term impact of all of it. So what are your thoughts, Andre?
Well, we are talking about 700 credit, but at the end of the day, when I went to the dealership, I was dealing with the dealership. I was dealing with that local dealership. So going back to the FTC, safeguard laws and so forth like that, I think at the end of the day, the dealership is going to get the bad press, the lawsuits are going to go to the dealership, and then behind the scenes, dealerships are going to go to 700 credit. But then I'm pretty sure there's going to be some type of fine print that says, well, we're not really responsible, and we can only give you back 3 months of what you paid for or something like that. So I think at the end of the day, the dealerships are going to be the ones that are the ones who are going to suffer the most. Well, the consumer is going to be the one that's going to suffer the most. But after that, it's going to be the dealerships, because I went to the dealership. I gave you my social, Mr. Dealer Man. I gave you my date of birth and all of that information. And I don't care what third-party companies you use. That's your problem. But my lawyers is going to be contacting you.
Ooh.
It reminds me, Andre, of the Power School breach, because that was very similar, where you had thousands of schools using a software called Power School, and you had students giving their information to the school, families, parents giving their information to their kids to the school, all that stuff. So the consumer in that case dealing with the school, and then the school gets breached. But we find out later, as you remember, as all that was shaken down, we found out later that it was Power School. And it was Power School that didn't have like MFA turned on or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was not like this intricate attack. And who's going to sue who in that case, right? I think you're right. I think that's a good point here, man. Are the dealerships going to get sued that had data breached? Will it be 700 credit? Will it be the third party? Or what? And I would just say, if you are a business owner, or you're an IT professional that's watching this show, you want to make sure the backdoor access you're giving to the good guys You need to make sure it's set up correctly. And it needs to be limited, as much as possible. That's the whole idea behind zero trust. Who needs the data are the only people that should get the data. And then it needs to be limited. There needs to be hurdles in place. So when they get in one place, they don't just all of a sudden have the keys to everything. And then boom, they're in there for 3 or 4 months and you never even noticed it. So there's so much here that's going to come out.
Yeah, just remember when there was that RMM breach, which is basically the software us MSPs use to remote into clients' machines. And when that got breached, it's like the customers came to us and were like, well, we thankfully none of us here, it happened to us.
Right.
But customers were going to their service providers to be like, what the heck? And service providers were like, well, it's not really us, it's the tool that we use. So it's that same concept. So at the end of the day, that tool is still going to get the lawsuits and to get the bad press, but the end user is going to be going directly to that person.
Man, when you guys talk and we just talk about all this stuff, right? And then Andre, you make a great point with the auto dealers and like who you're actually doing business with and who you view or what your perception of who your relationship is actually with when these events occur, right? It literally just happened to me yesterday. Like I got a breach notice in the mail from this company called Marquee, and it was actually one of the things that popped up when I was doing research for the show this morning. Decided not to talk about it, but now I'm going to talk about it because the one thing that I found interesting about this letter, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it illustrates the example of just how messed up things are with businesses and cybersecurity and data breaches, and like how messed up it is in terms of it almost feels like it's like a cover-up in a way. It's like it almost feels like these companies are laughing at all of us, knowing that they're not protecting people's information, and it's just a big joke for everybody. Like, we'll just, we don't need to do it because at the end of the day, all we got to do is offer credit reporting, which like, I'm going to guess the statistics on people who actually take you up on the free credit reporting is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of less than 10%. Like, so I'm sure like it doesn't really cost these organizations a lot of money, but my point to all this is, and how messed up this really is the letter I got from this Marquee company is a letter that basically says, we have your data because we are a third-party vendor for a bunch of banks, right? And we essentially, what I read is we basically do marketing for banks, but we have your data and we were hacked. And, oh, by the way, we have your data because you did business with this bank that was listed. I've never had an account at this bank, ever.
Wow.
So
and we talked about this Marquee on last week's show.
So I'm like, I never did business with this particular bank. Now, I've done business with other banks that, I could see like if there was another bank name written there, but I don't know what happened, but something happened with their data and their record keeping, right? Or they were just really lazy and they were checking a box as a result of their class action lawsuit, notifying everybody, which is checking a box, giving everybody free credit reporting and protection, which is checking a box. And they really don't know or don't have the data to say like, hey, this actual person was actually a customer of this bank. So they don't know. So they're either guessing or they're, they just have the information wrong, which is also possible. But yeah, I never did business with this bank. It was a local regional Philadelphia bank, but I was aware of the name, but I never did business. I never had a bank account with them personally or through my business. Yet they were citing that bank as the reason my information ended up in their hands.
Did they, and I'm curious, did they say account numbers as well, or they just say name, email?
Honestly, the letter didn't detail what was stolen. It just said your information was compromised. And as a result of the class action lawsuit, we have to provide you with this free credit reporting service, right? Monitoring service. And that's all it was, right? It's a box checking exercise. But my point is, everything's a box checking exercise, which is a sad state of affairs for cybersecurity in 2025 going into 2026. And number two, this is how bad it is out there with companies and data and IT. And everybody's just out there running amok like it's the Wild Wild West still. So everybody thinks AI is going to take over the world. We can't even get regular computing right. So let's hold the phone on the AI talk, taking over people's jobs and stuff, because that's not a thing either. Hold the phone. All right, let's move on, Andre, as you bring us the wonderful world of Russian hackers.
Yeah.
This story that you brought to the table, how these network edge devices, which are going to have to educate everybody on what those are, and have become the new foothold for these big nation state operations. I have an interesting take on this when I read this, and I'll share that after you kind of do your rant. But what is this? What are these edge devices, and why should we even be concerned that this is an issue with nation state hackers or actors targeting these devices?
Yeah. So nothing new in the sense of we always talked about, nation states such as Russia targeting, the Western world. But what this article is kind of focusing on is that I wouldn't even want to call them Russian hackers anymore. It's more like Russian door openers, right? Like they're not really hacking. We're leaving the door open for these guys just to turn the knob and just come right in. So what we have is when we talk about edge devices, we're talking.
You just proved my point.
Oh, okay, that's what you're going to talk about.
You're just you just walk right in and do it.
Yeah. We gotta figure out what a one word instead of hacker, what another word could be. But basically,
computer user. Somebody with a little bit of computer knowledge.
Yeah. So these door openers, they basically look for these network devices, which are your router, firewalls, VPN gateways, network management appliances. So basically things that what they call sit on the edge, not necessarily the computers or those type of devices. And what they do is they look for misconfiguration. So a lot of times we'll talk about zero-day exploitation, which is when there is a flaw in the system, and this still happens, of course. There's a flaw in the system, and by the time an update comes to that device for that system to be updated, these hackers or door openers can go ahead and go in. So we're not even talking about 0-day. We're just talking about misconfiguration. We're talking about keeping the regular username and password, or making the password or not configuring the firewalls correctly. And the door openers are just coming and just saying, oh, wow, they just, and I guess using a little AI, they are like saying, oh, wow, this has this configuration set incorrectly. We can just go right around. And then when they sit on the network edge, those devices are basically capturing all of the different traffic, and that's how they can now do a lot of bad stuff in the sense of like, okay, what are they doing? Let's go ahead and get these passwords, and just a lot of different things they can do from there. But the biggest thing is Russia's in our systems, and we are making it extremely easy for them to just break in or come in, walk in. How about that? Walk in.
It's like Putin and Xi had a meeting, and Putin's like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I hate to use the analogy of well, no, I won't use that analogy, but there used to be a 9/11 analogy as far as like, it's like, wow, here we are, we have all of this infrastructure to protect our country, but then they just like, oh, let's just go in this way, and boom, look at all the destruction they can cause, right? So as far as like a single terrorist versus you can't beat them this way, but if you just go around and just do that, it's going to be the same effect.
Well, I think what Russia has learned from the Chinese is that there are a slew of devices out there chock full of vulnerabilities that nobody's paying attention to that are directly connected to the internet. And we have to, as IT, as business, as the businesses out there. I mean, I can't even say it's businesses; it's everything. As I'm going to talk about in my segment, which is like municipal governments, seem to be pretty asleep at the wheel. Colleges, schools seem to be asleep at the wheel. So like everybody's asleep at the wheel. They're like just buying Fortinet routers, buying Cisco routers, plugging them in, and either allowing people who are not properly trained on how to support these devices run them, or they don't have anybody running them. They pay somebody a one-off project fee to come in and throw it in. Internet works, high five, great job, see you in 5 years. That's what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
Well, just the crazy thing is we're not, once again, and as we most of the time are, we're not talking about super complicated, sophisticated stuff. It's, hey, your router has a login facing the internet, and the login is admin or admin password or whatever the default is. And
dude,
y'all
you
know,
can't even blame it. But the problem is you can't even blame it on the user sometimes, because some of these guys or some of these manufacturers are putting hard-coded like usernames and passwords in these devices that the users don't even know about half the time.
Yep.
Right. And that's another problem in itself, but it all goes back to the same thing, right? If you buy one of those routers and Cisco or Fortinet figures out that they have some username and password hard coded, they're going to put an update out for that. And it's whether or not you have somebody on staff who's A, paying attention, and B, will actually update your router. And most businesses don't even have that.
Yep. And that's, man, I harp about that on the show a lot as well, because some of these firewalls, I'm not going to name any names.
Well, Fortinet is like in the news every 3 days.
I know.
So just call a spade there, Randy.
Some of these companies, though, they have complicated interfaces, complicated update process. It's like, if an IT professional is worried about bringing down the whole ding dang network by just doing an update on the router, okay, and they just are not doing it because it's so complicated, that does not solve anything. Complexity is the enemy of security. That's cybersecurity 101, day one, class one, in the first 15 minutes of the lecture from the professor or whatever, when you're learning how to do that. And I know I harp on this a lot, but man, we've got to make things like this simpler for the people to set up, keep updated, and all that jazz.
Well,
rant over.
The other thing is like you have all these business owners running around who think that like their one IT guy can do all this stuff. He knows how to turn on a computer. Maybe he set up your server 20 years ago, right? It doesn't mean he knows how to properly support that interface that Randy's talking about. That's complex. Unless you're paying for him to go to training, or somehow you have some unicorn IT guy that just figures all this stuff out on his own and does all this research and learning on his own time. Dude, they don't exist out there. Like those guys don't, like they're rare. That's why I call them a unicorn, right? So you probably don't have that person, right? So you probably have most IT departments and IT people I come across are underfunded, undertrained, and overworked, and they just have too much to do. And getting to stuff like this is not on their priority list.
Yep, especially if it's working, right?
No doubt.
Once that thing goes on the internet, hey, customer, it's working. Customer's like, all right, awesome, see you later.
Customer, employer, I see it in IT departments where IT guys are like, hey, everything's working. We don't have to do anything today. We just sit here and twiddle our thumbs.
Right.
But no, you got 17 vulnerabilities and, half your network devices are out of date. You could update those, but that's not what happens. They either are too busy or they just don't do these things, right? They sit around, they twiddle their thumbs or play Fortnite. I don't know. So, all right, guys, anything else on that one?
No, that's all.
I'm going to play a video. I don't know if it's going to come through, but we're going to try. I just want to make sure I have. Can you guys hear that?
No, not.
Oh, wow. I just got a dangerous site. This site looks suspicious.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, and we can't see it either.
Yeah, hold on.
Hey, click on it. See where it goes.
So I don't know where the option to show the audio for the tab is. So sorry. I don't know if the audio is going to come through or not, but I'm going to try. Here we go.
There we go.
Also breaking, the city of Attleboro says its email service and most of its phone lines are down following what they call a cybersecurity incident.
The city says the police and fire departments are fully operational. People can still call 911 for emergencies, and the police and fire departments' business lines and radios still work. The city also says schools were not affected and City Hall remains open, though some departments may not be able to do certain tasks until computer systems are back online.
We're working to gather more information and we'll bring you an update when we get it.
All right, guys. So here's the deal with, let me get out of that. We're just going to move into discussion mode here because I'm going to close that tab too because it just wants to keep playing. Here we go. So this is, I'm going to kind of flip the lens here a little bit. I pulled up that cyber attack video. That's out of Attleboro, Massachusetts, where, as they said, online services were knocked offline by a cyber incident. And these are things that are happening around the country that I just want to bring awareness to, where these stories clearly don't make national news, right? They don't make, most people don't find out about this stuff. These are incidents that barely crack local TV news. Maybe they have an article written about them in the local online paper, right? And that's the reality for a ton of public agencies. And we're not talking IT departments responsible for credit cards or global clouds. We're talking about police record systems, school networks, fire department scheduling, city payment portals. They're all being hit right now. In the last 24 hours, where we pull our threat intelligence from, where we look at what companies are being attacked, where, right? We're seeing all these, there's literally 20 in the last 24 hours that have appeared on dark web leak sites for either a municipality, a school, a fire department, or a police department being hit in the U.S., right? And I'm going to list some here in a second. But there's thousands of districts, victims in the U.S. alone being logged in real time, right? So this isn't random. This is a trend. Local municipalities are clearly under attack, and we just don't see it or don't realize it, guys, because this is all being kind of divvied up between all these local news outlets out there. Nobody's talking about this at a high level on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, right? We want to, we just want to talk about maybe what's going on in Washington, D.C. all the time. And we don't want to pull our heads up out of sand and take a look at what's happening in all these cities and towns across America. So I'm just going to read a couple here, or a few. St. Paul, Minnesota, declared a cyber emergency when city systems went down under a coordinated attack. The National Guard had to be called in. Atchison County in Kansas, right? And let me just pull some of these other ones up, guys, that I have. Give me 1 second. But what do you guys think is going on here in terms of what you're seeing? I mean, we talked about this in the green room before we did the show, and you guys were like, wow, yeah, this is happening all over the place. So what do you think's going on here?
I think it's a great way to stay under the radar, because when you are doing those individual cities versus doing one big target, I'm sure there was lessons learned with the pipeline, with the Colonial Pipeline when that happened. So much pressure. Now the FBI is involved and all of the other departments are hey, we can't have the gas and all of this stuff not be disrupted and so forth like that. So if you just continue hitting them one at a time. It takes a little longer, but what's happening in Massachusetts doesn't know what's happening in Texas from Florida. And so I think it's a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, you got Minersville Area School District, right? West Pierce Fire and Rescue, Dutchess County Public Libraries. I mean, and nothing is off the table. Police, libraries, schools. We got Zion Elementary School District 6. We have Hillsborough County in New Hampshire. We have South Old Town in New York State. Milwaukee Police Department. We have Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, Attleboro, Massachusetts, as we played the video for. We have the city of Leavenworth, Kansas. And this isn't like some third-party system that got breached and impacted all these towns and cities that might use the same system. These are all individual cyber attacks that I'm talking about right here. Right?
Well,
right before the holidays, go ahead, Randy.
Well, the way my brain works, I start trying to make connections between stuff. And, we just did a whole segment on, Russian operatives hacking edge devices. I just think, I don't know if these are connected that way. I don't know if they're connected to that, but very easily this could be something geopolitical. I've been reading a lot lately about a lot more pray and spray going on with individuals. By pray and spray, I mean the bad guys just send them to everybody, hoping they snag somebody important, and then using that access to then get into their work or their county or whatever that they have. So, I don't know if it's related to that or not. That's a big question that starts popping up in my brain when y'all start talking about this.
Yeah, so I mean, just to mention a few others that happened in the last few weeks, like Superior State University, guys. You also have Dillon County in South Carolina. I mean, it's just endless. Fargo Park District, right? And the other interesting thing that I'm seeing with a lot of these, which make Kaufman County in Texas, that might be familiar to you, Randy.
Bastrop County as well. We just heard about that last week.
The other thing that's interesting about all these is it's taken them a bit to find out there's an issue. So that almost, based on my experience, Randy, that kind of puts some credence to your edge device theory, right? That they're getting in through these edge devices, and it's taken them a minute to kind of figure out, how they can move laterally or how much, to get access to other machines, things like that, so they can do more damage.
Hey, wasn't that the point of having like a federal government where it's supposed to be able to recognize things happening in all of these different regions and then be able to help?
Well, clearly that's not in place. So our adversaries probably know that more than anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No one's talking to anybody.
Yeah, we're not working together.
Yeah.
I can tell you that, and it doesn't seem like there's much of an appetite for anybody in an elected position to kind of push that issue forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see any end in sight with this, which means that as AI improves, you're going to need to have cybersecurity as part of your plan, or you're going to be out of business one day because of a cyber attack.
Yeah.
You must, I guess, to start a business here in the future, you're going to have to put defenses up, like quickly. Like cybersecurity used to be a thing that people didn't think about until they got to a certain size at some point. You're going to have to start thinking about this stuff as a one-person company. And then when you're 2 and you're 3 and you're 4, you might not have to do a lot, but you have to at least have a plan. So as you scale, this becomes easier for you to do, because if you start doing it when you're at 10 or 20 or 30 employees, or you're 50 employees and have a cyber attack, it's going to be way harder, way more costly. Your company is going to have to change how it does things so much. I'd rather do that when I'm 1 or 2 people than 50 people. So that's just a little heads up there. So let's wrap this up, guys. Going back to Randy's discussion, where these third-party integrations are only as strong as the weakest link. Andre, you talked about these edge devices, and I talked about the public sector being ground zero for these underreported attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And give us a real litmus test as to what's going on out there. Look, the other thing of it, the other side of that too is, guys, is public sector has to report this stuff. And that's kind of like what they figured out is like, hey, we can just kind of give this to like the local news, internet site that nobody really goes to or reads, and kind of announce it there that we had a data breach. And they've kind of figured that out a little bit, right? And that's kind of the play. Unfortunately for private businesses, they get the luxury of just not telling anybody at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on out there. Like, you're just not hearing about these data breaches until it ends up as a dark web leak site situation or a class action lawsuit situation. And that's what businesses know and figure out. So if you run networks for business or governments, assume that the attackers are already probing you right now. Make sure you're thinking about hardening your systems, segmenting your networks, and get some detection in place before you get front page bad news. And if you got value out of this show, please subscribe, rate us where you can, share us on your favorite platforms so your friends and family learn about this podcast, and drop us a review on your favorite podcasting platform if you listen to us. It helps spread the word. And if you really want to support Randy, Andre, and I, the quickest way to do that is to buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Security Squawk. We've run this podcast for a long time now, and it's something I don't really talk about, but my inbox gets filled every week with offers to bring guests on this show, to promote people's products on this show, which the three of us have agreed that we're going to refuse because, number one, this isn't an interview format style show. And we're not going to bring somebody onto the show and interview them so they can just promote their cybersecurity product, or whatever, right? And we get offers to get paid to bring these CEOs and these people on all the time, and we refuse. So if you can buy us a coffee or do something like that to help us out, that's what we appreciate. And that's why we keep bringing you the content in the format that we bring it in, which is just straightforward, no nonsense, all content, no commercials, no filler, all day long for the last, 5-6 years now, guys. So next week, we look forward to it. We'll be back with our last episode of the year, where we're going to talk about, obviously, more threat intel breakdowns, but we're also going to bring you our predictions for 2026. And I'm going to have my team dig up our predictions from 2024 and see what came true and what didn't in 2025 based on our predictions from last year. So I look forward to that show. We'll see everyone next week. Take care. Stay safe.
Take care.